lounging, son.
Welcome back to another episode of The Short Box. My name is Ryan, and today we're going to be talking about Scalped. It's in my top 5 comic book series of all time. Jason Aaron on writing, Guera on art, and this was from Vertigo. You know, Vertigo, responsible for some of my favorite series of all time: 100 Bullets, Preacher, Sandman, DMZ, Why the Last Man, Fables. I mean, I could go on for days talking about all the great stuff that's come from Vertigo. My only I love recommending this series to people, and it's so hard because it's been out of print for such a long time. But if you can find yourself the trades, the collected editions, I highly recommend you seek those out. You know, I got a chance to talk to Guera. This was the second time I had a chance to talk with him, and you know, talking to him just made me want to crack this one open and kind of just talk about the first issue. I won't go too deep into it for those of you that haven't seen it, but this is a great introduction. And reading it again this is probably like the 7th or 8th time I've read this particular issue. It's crazy to see to see the characters at the beginning of the series and where they eventually end up. But again, I will not spoil anything. I will just talk about what we're seeing here. So right off the bat, we got a pretty sick cover by Jock, who did all the covers for the series. Also, another one of my favorite artists. And let's get into it. Well, you know what? Before we get into it, let's just talk about the cover. So obviously, you know, Scalped, it's, you know, just from the cover alone, you can kind of get a feel for what it's talking about. He's obviously wearing Native American headdress. There's a casino. We got, you know, somebody sitting on a horse over here, and he's got nunchucks around his neck, blood on his shirt. So right off the bat, you know that this is going to be a violent story. You can kind of guess it's set on a Native American reservation where they got a casino, Indian casino, and look at the cockiness in his face just from there. And we're going to get into his character, who is one of my favorite characters in comics right now. So right off the bat, we are taken to Prairie Rose Reservation in South Dakota. Fictional town, but that doesn't take away from the mystique of, like, just right off the bat, you can see that the sign's all fucking dirty. It's battered. And we pull up to this Badlands Cafe. And just from the dialogue, you can see, I'll be goddamned if we ain't in for one hell of a shitstorm. And what we see next is nothing less than a fucking shitstorm. So, got a bar fight about to take place, all led by this man right here. This book is heavy with fucking cuss words. This is not for the faint of heart. This is not for your kids at all. And this is where we meet Dashiell Badhorse wanting to talk to Red Crow, who's the chief and basically the quote-unquote like mob boss of the reservation, right? My favorite part, this is what hooked me right off the bat. Which of you motherfuckers is going to be the first to cry to Jesus? I mean, Jason Aaron's fucking writing, his dialogue, is on full display in this series. This is his best book, in my opinion. Of all the stuff he's written, you know, I love his Thor. His Thor run is one of my favorite runs in comic books. I mean, he did 7 years on it. But this is the book that if I had one Jason Aaron book to pick to take with me on a desert island, this would be the book. So, like I said, Jason Aaron's the writer, R.M. Guera is the artist, Lee Larridge on colors, Phil Balsman on letters, Jock did the cover. We got Casey Sages, assistant editor, Will Dennis, the editor. And look at this, dude. Just the fighting, the brawl that takes place. And we don't learn that it's Dash Badhorse until this mysterious character, who we learn about later. I won't get too into him because he's just kind of in the shadows. But he's like, man, it's been 15 years since Dash has been around here. And and he comes in swinging, man. Here we go. There's the Crazy Horse Casino like we saw on the cover. And, Dash got the shit kicked out of him. He got his ass handed to him. But, as we'll see, that everything is happening for a reason here. And they kind of figure this guy's got a death wish, right? So they take him to the boss. And, he says, man, you've grown into one tough as leather son of a bitch, Mr. Bad Horse. And he's like, man, I'm fair to middling. Like he's not like really claiming how badass he is. And, we see that he goes way back with Red Crow, right? He's like, man, I remember when you used to call me Uncle Red Crow, and kind of talks about how he ran away from the reservation when he was 13. And last he heard, he was well on his way to becoming a waste of space like his old man. We don't know much about Dash's parents quite yet. Red Crow kind of talks about his mom and kind of knocking her, pretty much calling her a mouthy bitch. Eventually, Red Crow comes to offer him a job. He sees that Dash doesn't really care about the reservation, doesn't care about his heritage and all that shit, right? And he's letting Dash know that he's not only president of the tribal council, he's the sheriff of the police force, chairman of the Prairie Rose Planning Committee, treasurer of the Highway Safety Program. He runs this shit. Everything runs through Red Crow. And this is the type of story that I like. I love, the noir crime, and this mixes that with Western and just the drama and everything, and like R.M. Guera's art is so different, and was at the time for me when I picked this book up, was so different than anything else I was looking at. You can definitely see European influences in it, and that's what also really struck out with me and why it was so captivating to me. And let's talk about this ad. Vertigo Comics is by far the HBO of the comic world. That was a quote from the Washington Examiner. Again, it's just seeing stuff like this. It just makes me sad that we no longer have Vertigo. I wish they were still around. Like I said, responsible for some of my favorite series that I've read multiple times. So this is where Red Crow's kind of he's threatening. He's flexing his power with Dash. You see this, and he's like, you see this knife? It's 200 years old and it's claimed more lives than typhoid. So he's letting him know, man, no matter how old he is, he's the boss. Dash doesn't break. You know what I mean? Like he's a stubborn motherfucker. Just letting Dash go, which is what he says. Just let me go and I'll be gone for good. He's like, I got a better idea. My boys are stretched thin. Let's have you come fucking. He's like, I'm gonna give you the opportunity of a lifetime. He makes him a cop. He just has this like aura about him that just screams fucking badass, doesn't give a fuck, no emotion. And even here, when the other officers are telling him to, okay, let's move on my mark, he says, fuck all that, kicks the door in. And we see a drug den. And Dash, doesn't give a shit. And we see later, right, we meet another character, Shunka, who's Red Crow's right-hand man. We meet Gina. This is the other half of the reservation that is still like honoring their old heritage. They basically are protesting against what Red Crow is trying to turn the reservation into. And we see here Dashiell, she says, right? So we see that she knows who he is. Walks right up, slaps across the face. He throws her against the car. Calls him a fucking ingrate, makes her sick, and he calls her a crazy bitch. We see, that he's getting threatened, gets a knife pulled to his throat by one of Gina's friends. He lets her go, and she even says, "Don't worry about it. This fascist prick isn't worth it," right? So we still don't know what the connection is as we're reading, and Shunka kind of talks a little shit, kind of calls her a whore. And Dash is right here saying, oh, she seems like a cold-hearted bitch. And Chunka's like, well, I guess you'd know. She's your mom. So we realize it's his mom that he was fighting with. which makes it even crazier what could have happened, right? To put them both in this position. And as we see, Dash meets back up with Red Crow. They kind of talk it out. He's like, I heard what you did to your mom. And then this is what ingratiates Dash in with Red Crow. And, he takes him around the town and kind of just giving him the whole rundown, right? And then we run into her, who happens to be Red Crow's daughter. He warns him. He warns Dash. He's like, you should remember her. You were in love with her when you were 12. So, or him and Carol, Red Crow's daughter, go way back. So she obviously recognizes him too, but he says, stay away. She's no good. Dash and Red Crow are rolling around. He's like, man, I used to be naive like you when they were protesting against the U.S. and stuff. And this is in the 70s, and Red Crow was part of this group called the Dog Soldier Society, which Gina, Dash's mom, was also part of. And one day things went bad and some federal agents got killed. And as we continue, Dash again, he's like, I don't give a shit about all that stuff. I don't care about the good old days. And that kind of makes Red Crow happy, feels like he can trust him. And at the end of the issue, we see these federal agents kind of sitting there talking about how they need to bring Red Crow down. Flip the last page, and that's where we find out that Dash isn't just there working with Red Crow, but he's a double agent because he's with the FBI. And that's how Aaron and Guera conclude this awesome issue. And if that doesn't make you want to check this book out, I mean, I don't know what would. That is one of the best first issues I've ever read in my 20 plus years of reading comic books. No matter how many times I read it, it still packs that punch that makes me want to continue on. That was Scalped number 1. If you can get your hands on this series, do it. Don't sleep on this book. I know it's hard to find. This will be a series I will continue to talk about. I just wanted to talk about this first issue today. Probably maybe do it on an episode of the podcast. Maybe do an off the shelf. I don't know. I haven't decided how I want to cover this book, but rest assured there will be more talk of Scalped on this channel. And if you haven't already, give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Comic Lounge. Throw your comments or suggestions down below. Or if you want, you can email us at thecomicloungepod@gmail.com. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you're notified every time a new episode goes up. And also, you can find the audio podcast and some of our interviews as well on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, wherever you listen to podcasts. And also, hit the subscribe button on there so that those will also notify you every time a new audio episode goes up. And on that note, I'm out.